The anime begins with our main protagonist, Kaido, creeping towards a slime in a cave. But instead of using a sword or knife, he sprays 2 bottles of insecticide on the slime until it withers away and dies. Kaido feels a surge of happiness at how skilled he has become at killing slimes. This isn't surprising, as this is his 999th slime kill since he started working in these dungeons, determined to reach the 1000 mark. Venturing deeper into the dungeon, Kaido spots a golden slime sitting on a pillar. Excited by his luck at finding such a rare spawn for his 1000th kill, he quickly realizes this one isn't going to be easy. Undeterred, Kaido grabs a more powerful spray gun filled with pesticide and successfully kills the slime. He celebrates his 1000th kill and eagerly checks his stats, only to realize his level remains the same despite killing a golden slime. Hoping for good loot, he finds a small golden card with a girl drawn on it instead of a normal mana core. Initially confused, he soon realizes it's a servant card, a very rare item, and checks the stats, discovering the servant is a Valkyrie named Sylphie. Deciding to leave the dungeon before researching further, Kaido heads back, passing a group of adventurers with impressive armor, which he envies. At the reception, he exchanges slime cores for money. The receptionist then Hitsu gives him 100 yen per core, totaling 500 yen, which disappoints Kaido, but he takes it and moves on. He then asks Hitsu about the value of a rare servant card, especially a divine class one. But Hitsu thinks for a moment and tells him such a card could be worth over 1 billion yen. Shocked, Kaido keeps this information to himself, heads to his locker, changes into everyday clothing, and exits the area. It turns out the dungeon is part of an amusement park where people can get memberships to explore and find valuable items. Children in costumes talk about wanting to be explorers when they grow up, but Kaido is lost in thought about the card. While waiting for the train, he meets his friends Shinji and Hayato. On the train, Kaido tells them he's still stuck at level 3 and asks why they don't explore dungeons. Hayato then explains that 2 years ago, they encountered a goblin on the 2nd floor of a dungeon. Thinking it would be easy prey, the goblin ended up beating them all badly. Since then, Shinji and Hayato decided dungeons weren't for them and preferred exploring other attractions with their passes. Later that night, Kaido gets off the train, goes home, has dinner with his family, takes a bath, and goes to sleep. The next morning, he wonders whether to sell the card for 1 billion yen, which would buy him all the armor and video games he wants. However, his thoughts are interrupted by his friend Katsuragi, who asks where he was last night. Initially, Kaido lies, saying he was at a party with Shinji and Hayato. However, when Katsuragi asks them about the party, they end up giving different answers, like hooking up with your mother and bowling. However, Katsuragi realizes they are lying and asks if Kaido went to the dungeons again, but Kaido manages to lie convincingly and barely escapes. Later that day at school, he asks his friends what they would do with the servant card. They immediately reply that they would sell it, as it's worth a lot and you can't summon a servant outside of the dungeons anyway. Kaido then ponders whether to sell the card, but when he goes to the dungeons that day, he decides to keep it, wanting to become one of the strongest adventurers ever. Hiding from the camera, he takes out the card and calls forth Sylphie, the Valkyrie, to be his servant and follow his command. Suddenly, the card starts glowing, emitting a bright light that transforms into a huge woman with feathery wings and an ethereal form. She grabs Kaido and disappears. Confused, Kaido turns around to see a small Valkyrie in armor standing beside him. He asks who she is, wondering if a child got lost, but the Valkyrie replies that she is Sylphie, his servant from now on. Kaido's dreams of becoming a powerful adventurer shatter as he drops to the floor, regretting not selling the card. He pulls himself together and tells her they need to hunt some slimes. Sylphie senses something nearby, and Kaido decides to test her intuition, asking her to lead him to the creatures. She then easily locates the slime, and when Kaido asks if she can kill it, she immediately goes into action. Initially, Kaido wasn't expecting much from such a small girl, but to his surprise, Sylphie conjures a lightning attack so devastating that he fears the whole cave might collapse. Kaido then walks towards her, asking if she's alright, but she blushes and claims she's hungry. Remembering that servants eat mana cores, Kaido feeds her the core from the slime. She then thanks him and claims there are more slimes nearby. Kaido then asks if she can only detect slimes, and Sylphie replies that she can detect all monsters but feels hungry after each battle, needing to eat a mana core. Realizing this method is impractical for making money, Kaido devises a plan. He tells Sylphie to track down the slimes, which she happily does. Kaido then uses his spray bottles to kill them one by one. This efficient method allows him to save time by heading directly to the targets and neutralizing them with his insecticide sprays. After killing a bunch, he levels up to level 4 and gains a new passive skill called Slime Slayer, which boosts his stats by 50% when fighting slimes. Though initially disappointed with his new skill, Sylphie raises his spirits by saying that gaining a skill is an achievement in itself. Kaido smiles, thanks her for the help, and says he will return home as it's getting late. But Sylphie asks if he will summon her again soon, and he promises to do so as soon as possible. He then recalls Sylphie back to her servant card and heads to the reception to sell the manacores. However, Hitsu is shocked, exclaiming that he broke the daily slime extermination record by a large margin. She asks how he did it, and Kaido lies, saying he just got lucky. He then takes his 15,000 yen reward and heads home. Later that night, he contemplates venturing to the second level of the dungeon. Despite his fear of goblins, he believes Sylphie's strength will help him defeat them. That night, he dreams of a childhood memory, sitting in front of the TV with Katsuragi, watching an interview with Katsuragi's dad, a famous adventurer. The interview fills Kaido with amazement and solidifies his desire to follow in the same footsteps. The next morning, he wakes up with newfound conviction and confidence. Equipped with a new sword and shield bought with his reward money, he heads to the second floor of the dungeon alongside Sylphie, determined to clear all the dungeons and become the most famous adventurer in the world. As they enter the cave and walk for a while, Sylphie notices something is wrong. She then asks Kaido if he's okay, seeing that he looks pale and is shaking. Terrified of the cave, Kaido lies, saying he's just excited. But when Sylphie senses a goblin nearby, Kaido immediately turns and starts running. Sylphie, confused, asks what he's doing, but Kaido lies again, claiming he has urgent work at home. However, he suddenly remembers Katsuragi's dad from the TV interview and stops, deciding not to give up on his dreams, and grabs his wooden sword. They soon find a goblin sleeping behind a giant rock, but Kaido is too scared to act and asks Sylphie to kill it. She quickly agrees and begins chanting her spell. Suddenly, the goblin wakes up ready to fight, but Kaido jumps in between with his sword and tells Sylphie he's changed his mind. He rushes towards the goblin but misses his strike as the goblin backs off. The goblin then attacks, trying to ram Kaido to the ground, but he blocks the hit with his shield at the last moment. Seizing the opportunity, Kaido rushes in with his sword, but the goblin blocks the strike, disarming him and jumping to give him back shots. However, Kaido falls backward, defenseless, but remembers his sprays. Quickly, he sprays the goblin's eyes, blinding it and giving him a chance to land the final blow. But as he retrieves his sword and rushes towards the goblin, he trips over a rock and accidentally stabs the goblin in the chest, killing it instantly. Sylphie congratulates Kaido, who is still terrified but relieved to be alive. He then grabs the mana core and a golden glow emits from him, telling that he's leveled up again. Checking his stats, he discovers a new skill called Goblin Slayer. Although he has mixed feelings about this seemingly useless skill, he decides to accept it and move on. They soon venture deeper into the cave, where another goblin attacks, but Sylphie uses a defensive barrier to block the attacks, while Kaido times his sword slash perfectly, killing the monster. Kaido then kills his third goblin using the spray bottle to blind it before delivering the final blow. However, Sylphie drags him to yet another foe, and Kaido kills this goblin with a sword strike to the head, ranking up to level 6. As they continue walking, Kaido asks if Sylphie knows anything about the dungeons, but she replies that she has no idea and that her sole purpose is to help her master. Deeper inside, they find their final goblin of the day. It attacks Kaido while Sylphie uses her lightning magic to destroy the beast. Kaido then feeds her the mana core before heading outside. He hands over the mana crystals to Hitsu, lying again that it was just a fluke, and then heads home. That night, his body was so sore that he's unable to move from his bed. The next morning, he drags himself to school, walking alongside Katsuragi, who immediately suspects he went to the dungeons. Kaido denies it, claiming he was just bodybuilding at the gym, which is why he's sore. In the classroom, Kaido tells Shinji and Hayato about his new adventures in the level 2 dungeons, including killing 4 goblins. They are surprised and skeptical, but Kaido insists he's telling the truth and says he's going deeper today. After school, he returns to the dungeons with Sylphie and explores the distant parts of the cave. They kill goblins again, and with great teamwork, Sylphie blocks attacks while Kaido lands the killing blows. When Kaido gets too tired, Sylphie finishes the monsters with her lightning magic. After another exhausting expedition, Kaido sleeps like a log. The next day, he upgrades to a Drake, which does much more damage to the goblins, but he's so exhausted, he ends up sleeping in class. Despite this, he continues his adventures, going to the dungeons day after day and killing goblins by any means necessary until he reaches level 10, a big milestone for him. This time, he gets a special skill called Divine Love, which boosts his stat growth at every level, depending on the amount of love and care a divine goddess shows him. He immediately decides to confess how happy he is to go on adventures with someone as cool as Sylphie. The next monster they encounter is a glowing skeleton, a creature they've never faced before. Kaido tells Sylphie to stay alert, and she deploys her magic barrier. The skeleton then rushes at them, crashing against the barrier and trying to break through. Kaido tries to attack but finds his weapons too weak for this rare spawn. He then asks Sylphie to deal with it, and she chants her spell, shooting a lightning bolt that kills it instantly. However, the mana core dropped by the skeleton is bright red. This made him wonder if it could be rare, but decides to feed it to Sylphie anyway. Later that day, Kaido goes to Hitsu with his loot and asks about the mana core dropped by the glowing skeleton. Hitsu then explains that it's a rare drop and can easily fetch upwards of 2 million yen. Learning that he could have been a millionaire, Kaido was devastated. Hitsu then tells him not to worry, as encountering it once means he might meet it again. That night, Kaido wonders about the lost money but decides it doesn't matter since he leveled up significantly. He contemplates moving on to the 3rd floor but knows the enemies there appear in groups and are much more dangerous. The next day, he tells Sylphie that he wants her to simply watch for a while and not intervene. However, Sylphie, thinking that she did something wrong, apologizes, but Kaido explains that he wants to go up to the 3rd floor. He's afraid of becoming too dependent on her to save him, so he wants to get stronger first. Hearing this, Sylphie is relieved and wishes him good luck. Suddenly, a goblin appears from behind a rock and Kaido confidently tells Sylphie to watch as he deals with it. However, his plan backfires and he ends up getting injured badly. This led to him buying potions from Hitsu, which drains all of his savings. That night, he realizes he needs a lot of mana cores to feed Sylphie and better equipment. He decides to go back to square one and enters the 1st floor again to kill as many slimes as possible, gaining skills, levels, and mana cores. After several days of hard work in the dungeons alone, he finally collects enough mana cores to feel comfortable moving on to the 3rd floor. Before leaving the cave, Sylphie claims she senses a different kind of slime. Her intuition proves correct when Kaido spots a silver slime nearby. He immediately jumps into action and rushes the slime with his spray gun, but the slime is faster and dodges away. Thankfully, Sylphie is raiding nearby and uses her lightning magic to kill the slime instantly. To their surprise, the slime drops another servant card, an incredibly lucky find. Kaido then picks up the card and sees it's a demon rank card for a servant named Luce. He looks at Sylphie, who seems visibly upset by the card and soon realizes that demons and goddesses must not get along well. Despite this, he decides to follow his own wishes without consulting Sylphie and summons the demon servant right there. A huge red flame envelops them, and a large demon mommy emerges, flying straight through Kaido in her ethereal form, just like what happened with Sylphie. Soon he looks down and spots another summon, this time a demon with bat wings and horns. This then concludes the first episode's recap of this anime. If you enjoyed this video and want more of it, go ahead and hit that like button down below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you everyone for helping us in reaching 5,000 subscribers. Let's continue to grow this community and help us reach a new goal of 10,000 subscribers.